leadership, the Israelites, with divine assistance, vanquished the foe. Subsequently Jehovah decreed ultimate annihilation for the Amalekites, instructing Moses to make a written record about this and to propound it to Joshua. Acts 17. 8-16. Serves as Moses' attendant. Later, at Mount Sinai, Joshua, as Moses' attendant, likely was one of the 70 older men who were privileged to see a magnificent vision of Jehovah's glory. Thereafter Joshua accompanied Moses partway up Mount Sinai, but apparently did not enter the cloud, since Moses alone was commanded to do so. Acts 24. 9-18 Both he and Moses remained on Mount Sinai for 40 days and 40 nights. At the end of this period, while descending Mount Sinai with Moses, Joshua mistook the sound of Israel's singing in connection with their idolatrous calf worship as a noise of battle. Doubtless he shared Moses' indignation when he caught sight of the golden calf, and perhaps even assisted Otex to execute Miritra Longo. Joshua 114 Upon the 68 assembled at the tent of meeting, Eldad and Medad likewise began acting as prophets in the camp. News of this was quickly brought to Moses. Then Joshua, feeling jealous for his lord, urged that Moses restrain them. Since Eldad and Medad had apparently received the Spirit apart from Moses' mediation, Joshua may have felt that this detracted from the authority of his Lord. But Moses corrected Joshua, saying, I wish that all of Jehovah's people were prophets, because Jehovah would put his Spirit upon them. New 11. 10-29. Compare Mr. 9. 38-39. Spies out the Promised Land. It was some time after this that the Israelites encamped in the wilderness of Paran. From there Moses sent out 12 men to spy out the Promised Land, one of these men being Joshua Hoshi, or Jehoshua. 40 days later only Joshua and Caleb brought back a good report. The other 10 spies disheartened the people, claiming that Israel could never hope to defeat the powerful inhabitants of Canaan. Consequently rebellious murmuring broke out in the camp. Joshua and Caleb then ripped their garments apart and, as they tried to allay the people's fears, cautioned them against rebellion. But their courageous words reflecting full confidence in Jehovah's ability to fulfill his word were to no avail. In fact, all the assembly talked of pelting them with stones. New 13. 2, 3, 8, 16, 25. 14. 10. For their rebellion Jehovah sentenced the Israelites to wander in the wilderness for 40 years until all the registered males not including the Levites, who were not registered among the other Israelites for military duty. New 1. 2, 3, 47 from 20 years old upward died off. Of the registered males, Joshua and Caleb alone were to enter the Promised Land, whereas the 10 unfaithful spies were to die by scourge from Jehovah. New 14. 27-38. Compare New 26. 65. 32. 11, 12. Appointed as Moses' successor. Toward the close of Israel's wandering in the wilderness, Moses and Aaron, for failing to sanctify Jehovah respecting the miraculous provision of water at Kadesh, also lost the privilege of entering the Promised Land. New 20. 1-13 Therefore, Jehovah instructed Moses to commission Joshua as his successor. In the immediate presence of the new high priest, Aaron's son Eleazar, and before the assembly of Israel, Moses placed his hands upon Joshua. Although appointed as Moses' successor, Joshua was not to be like him in knowing Jehovah face to face. Not all of Moses' dignity was transferred to Joshua, but only that which was needed for him to have the respect of the nation. Rather than the more direct communication Moses had been able to enjoy with Jehovah, face to face as it were, Joshua was to consult the high priest, to whom had been entrusted the Urim and Thummim by which the divine will could be ascertained. New 27. 18-23. 1. 37, 38. 31. 3. 34. 9, 10. As divinely directed, Moses gave certain instructions and encouragement to Joshua so that he might faithfully discharge his commission. 3. 21, 22, 28. 31. 7, 8 Finally, as the time of his death was nearing, Moses was to station himself with Joshua at the tent of meeting. Jehovah then commissioned Joshua, confirming the earlier appointment made by the imposition of Moses' hands. 31. 14, 15, 23. Subsequently Joshua participated in some way in writing and teaching the Israelites the song that was given to Moses by inspiration. 31. 19. 32. 44. Activities as Moses' successor. After Moses' death, Joshua prepared to enter the Promised Land. He dispatched officers so that these might instruct the Israelites about getting ready to cross the Jordan 3 days from then. He reminded the Gadites, Reubenites, and the half-tribe of Manasseh of their obligation to assist in the conquest of the land. And he sent out 2 men to spy out Jericho and the surrounding area. Jos 1. 1. 2. 1. Following the return of the 2 spies, the Israelites left Shittim and encamped near the Otextoiakutmiritra Longo. Joshua, Book of 115, went to the vicinity of Mount Ebal. There at Mount Ebal, Joshua built an altar according to the specifications outlined in the law. As half of the congregation stood in front of Mount Gerizim and the other half in front of Mount Ebal, Joshua read to them the law, the blessing and the malediction. There proved to be not a word of all that Moses had commanded that Joshua did not read aloud. Jos 8. 30-35. After returning to their Gilgal camp, Joshua and the chieftains of Israel had a visit from Gibeonite messengers. Recognizing that Jehovah was fighting for the Israelites, the Gibeonites, through trickery, succeeded in concluding a covenant of peace with Joshua. When the actual facts came to light, however, Joshua constituted them slaves. News of what the Gibeonites had done also reached Adoni-Zedek, the king of Jerusalem. For this reason he and 4 other Canaanite kings launched a punitive expedition against them. In response to an appeal from the Gibeonites for aid, Joshua staged an all-night march from Gilgal. Jehovah then fought for Israel in defense of the Gibeonites, indicating that he did not disapprove of the covenant that had earlier been made with them. More of the enemy forces perished as a result of a miraculous hailstorm than died in the actual warfare. Jehovah even listened to Joshua's voice in lengthening the daylight hours for the battle. Jos 9. 3. 10. 14. Joshua followed up this God-given victory by capturing Makeda, Libnah, Lachish, Eglon, Hebron, and Debir, thus breaking the power of the Canaanites in the southern part of the land. Next, the northern Canaanite kings, under the leadership of Jabin the king of Hazor, assembled their forces at the waters of Merom to fight against Israel. Though faced with horses and chariots, Joshua was divinely encouraged not to give way to fear. Again Jehovah granted victory to the Israelites. As instructed, Joshua hamstrung the horses and burned the chariots of the enemy. Hazor itself was consigned to the fire. Jos 10. 16. 11. 23. Thus, within a period of about 6 years, compare New 10. 11. 13. 2, 6. 14. 34-38. Jos 14. 6-10. Joshua defeated 31 kings and subjugated large sections of the Promised Land. Jos 12. 7-24. Map, Volume 1, p. 737. Now came the time for distributing the land to the individual tribes. This was done initially from Gilgal, under the supervision of Joshua, high priest Eleazar, and 10 other divinely appointed representatives. Jos 13. 7. 14. 1, 2, 6. New 34. 17-29. After the tabernacle was located at Shiloh, the apportioning of the land by lot continued from there. Jos 18. 1, 8-10. Joshua himself received the city of Timnath-Serah in the mountainous region of Ephraim. Jos 19. 49, 50. Final admonition to Israelites, and death. Toward the end of his life, Joshua assembled Israel's older men, its heads, judges, and officers, admonishing them to serve Jehovah in faithfulness and warning them of the consequences of disobedience. Jos 23. 1-16. He also called together the entire congregation of Israel, reviewed Jehovah's past dealings with their forefathers in the nation, and then appealed to them to serve Jehovah. Said Joshua, "Now if it is bad in your eyes to serve Jehovah, choose for yourselves today whom you will serve, whether the gods that your forefathers who were on the other side of the river served or the gods of the Amorites in whose land you are dwelling. But as for me and my household, we shall serve Jehovah. Judges 24. 1-15 Thereafter the Israelites renewed their covenant to obey Jehovah. Judges 24. 16-28 At the age of 110 years, Joshua died and was buried at Timnath-Serah. The good effect of his unswerving loyalty to Jehovah is evident from the fact that Israel continued to serve Jehovah all the days of Joshua and all the days of the older men who extended their days after Joshua. Judges 24. 29-31 JG 2. 7-9 2. Owner of a field at Beth-Shemesh, where the sacred ark Otextoi acute Miritra Longo, Joshua, Book of 116 indicates that it is a contemporary record. For example, see Judges 1. 11-18 2. 14-22 3. 2. 4. 24. 6. 22, 23. In fact, the writer identifies himself as living at the same time as Rahab of Jericho and therefore as an eyewitness. 6. 25. Authenticity. In the estimation of some, however, the book of Joshua is not true history. This view is primarily based on the assumption that, since the miracles mentioned in the book are foreign to recent human experience, they could not have happened. It therefore calls into question God's ability to perform miracles, if not also his existence, as well as the writer's integrity. For the writer to have embellished his account with fiction while presenting himself as an eyewitness would have made him guilty of deliberate deceit. Surely it is illogical to conclude that a book that honors God as the fulfiller of his word, the record of how Jehovah gave the land of Canaan to Israel, in fulfillment of his oath to their forefathers, events of the first 20 years or so following the death of Moses at the end of Israel's wandering in the wilderness. Joshua prepares Israel to enter Canaan, sends out spies 1. 2. 24 Jehovah commissions Joshua to lead the Israelites into the land. Joshua commands that Israel be instructed to get ready to cross the Jordan. He sends spies out to investigate the land and the city of Jericho. When these are in Jericho, they are hidden by Rahab, who is promised that she and all in her house who obey the instructions given will be spared in the coming destruction of Jericho. Israel crosses the Jordan River dry shod 3. 1. 5. 12 The people sanctify themselves in preparation for crossing the Jordan. Priests carrying the ark step into the river first. The river is miraculously dammed up some distance upstream, and the Israelites cross dry shod to memorialize the crossing. 12 stones are taken from the river and set up at Gilgal. Another 12 stones are set up where the priests stood in the river, but Israelite males born in the wilderness are circumcised. A Passover is celebrated. The provision of manna ceases, and Israel begins to eat the produce of the land. The conquest of Jericho is followed by defeat at I-5. 13. 8. 35 The angelic prince of Jehovah's army appears to Joshua. Jehovah tells Joshua how to fight against Jericho. For 6 days in succession the Israelites march once daily around the city. On the 7th day they march around it 7 times. Upon the final round they give a loud shout, Jericho's walls fall, and the city is devoted to destruction. Achan takes for himself some of what has been devoted to destruction because of this sin. Jehovah withdraws his aid, and Israel suffers defeat at Ai. Achan's sin is uncovered, and he and his household are stoned. The second attack against Ai succeeds with Jehovah's blessing. Joshua builds an altar at Mount Ebal and reads the law to the people. The Gibeonites sue for peace, while others are destroyed. 9. 1. 12. 24 The inhabitants of Gibeon, hearing of Israel's successes, shrewdly trick Joshua into making a covenant with them. 5 kings unite to attack the Gibeonites, but Israel comes to Gibeon's aid. Jehovah hurls great hailstones and miraculously lengthens the daylight hours, causing utter defeat for the attackers. The Israelites under Joshua capture cities in Us and the S. They are victorious over a coalition of kings in the N. Land is apportioned among tribes of Israel. 13. 1. 22. 34 Reuben, Gad, and half-tribe of Manasseh have territory of the Jordan. Caleb receives Hebron. The tribes of Judah, Ephraim, and other half of Manasseh are assigned a land inheritance by lot. The tabernacle is set up at Shiloh, and lots are drawn there to determine land inheritances for the remaining tribes. The Levites receive 48 cities. O Textoi acute Miritra Longo, Josiah 117 Judges 21. 43-45, encourages faithfulness to him. 23. 6-16. 24. 14, 15, 19, 20, 23, and openly acknowledges Israel's failures was produced by a false witness. 7. 1-5. 18. 3. No one can deny that the Israelite nation came into existence and occupied the land described in the book of Joshua. Likewise, there is no valid basis for challenging the truthfulness of that book's account concerning the way in which the Israelites gained possession of Canaan. Neither the psalmist's PS 44. 1-3. 78. 54, 55. 105. 42-45. 135. 10-12. 136. 17-22, nor Nehemiah E9. 22-25, nor the first Christian martyr Stephen Act 7. 45, nor the disciple James Jas 2. 25, nor the learned apostle Paul Act 13. 19. Heb 4. 8. 11. 30, 31 doubted its authenticity. And 1 Kings 16. 34 records the fulfillment of Joshua's prophetic curse uttered about 500 years earlier at the time of Jericho's destruction. Jos 6. 26. Writer. Some scholars, although acknowledging that the book was written in or near the time of Joshua, reject the traditional Jewish view that Joshua himself wrote it. Their main objection is that some of the events recorded in the book of Joshua also appear in the book of Judges, which commences with the words, "And after the death of Joshua." JG 1. Nevertheless, this opening statement is not necessarily a time indicator for all the events found in the Judges account. The book is not arranged in strict chronological order, for it mentions an event that definitely is placed before Joshua's death. JG 2. 6-9 Therefore, some things, such as the capture of Hebron by Caleb Jos 15. 13, 14. JG 1. 9, 10, Deber by Othniel Jos 15. 15-19. JG 1. 11-15, and Leshem, or Lishdan, by the Danites Jos 19. 47, 48. JG 18. 27-29, could likewise have taken place before Joshua's death. Even the action of the Danites in setting up an idolatrous image at Laish could reasonably fit Joshua's time. JG 18. 30, 31 In his concluding exhortation, Joshua told the Israelites, "Remove the gods that your forefathers served on the other side of the river and in Egypt, and serve Jehovah." Jos 24. 14 Had idolatry not existed, this statement would have had little meaning. Logically, then, with the exception of the concluding portion that reports his death, the book may be attributed to Joshua. As Moses had recorded the happenings of his lifetime, so it would have been fitting for Joshua to do likewise. The book itself reports, "Then Joshua wrote these words in the book of God's law." Jos 24. 26. Not contradictory. Some have felt that the book is contradictory in making it appear that the land was completely subdued by Joshua, while at the same time reporting that much of it remained to be taken. Compare Jos 11. 16, 17, 23. 13. 1. But such seeming discrepancies are easily resolved when one bears in mind that there were two distinct aspects in the conquest. First, national warfare under Joshua's leadership broke the power of the Canaanites. Next, individual and tribal action was required to take full possession of the land. 17. 14-18. 18. 3 Probably, while Israel was warring elsewhere, the Canaanites re-established themselves in cities such as Deber and Hebron so that these had to be retaken by individual or tribal effort. Compare Jos 11. 21-23 with Jos 14. 6, 12. 15. 13-17. Josiah Middle.ci If related to an Arabic root, may Jehovah heal. Jehovah has healed. 1. Son of Judean King Armant by Jedediah the daughter of Adaiah. 2 Kai 22. 1 Josiah had at least 2 wives, Hamutal and Zberda. 2 Kai 23. 31, 34, 36 of his 4 sons mentioned in the Bible, only the firstborn, Johanan, did not rule as king over Judah. 1 Ch 3. 14, 15. After the assassination of his father and the execution of the conspirators, 8-year-old Josiah became king of Judah. 2 Kai 21. 23, 24, 26. 2 Ch 33. 25 Some 6 years later Zberda gave birth to Josiah's second son, Joachim. 2 Kai 22. 1. 23. 36 In the 8th year of his reign, Josiah sought to learn no text to acute miritra longo, Jezibbe 118 apart and then commissioned a 5-man delegation to inquire of Jehovah on his behalf and on behalf of the people. The delegation went to the prophetess Huldah, then dwelling in Jerusalem, and brought back a report to this effect. Calamity will come as a consequence of disobedience to Jehovah's law. But because you, King Josiah, humbled yourself, you will be gathered to your graveyard in peace and will not see the calamity. 2 Kai 22. 3-20. 2 Ch 34. 8-28. See Huldah. Subsequently Josiah assembled all the people of Judah and Jerusalem, including the older men, the priests, and the prophets, and read God's law to them. After this, they concluded a covenant of faithfulness before Jehovah. Then followed a second and evidently a more intensive campaign against idolatry. The foreign god priests of Judah and Jerusalem were put out of business, and Levite priests who had become involved in improper worship at high places were deprived of the privilege of serving at Jehovah's altar. The high places built centuries earlier during Solomon's reign were made completely unfit for worship. In fulfillment of a prophecy uttered about 300 years previously by an unnamed man of God, Josiah pulled down the altar built by Israel's king Jeroboam at Bethel. The high places were removed not only at Bethel, but also in the other cities of Samaria, and the idolatrous priests were sacrificed on the altars where they had officiated. 1 Kai 13. 1, 2. 2 Kai 23. 1-20. 2 Ch 34. 29-33. In the 18th year of his reign, Josiah arranged for the celebration of the Passover, on Nisan 14. It transcended any Passover that has been observed since the days of the prophet Samuel. Josiah himself contributed 30,000 Passover victims and 3,000 head of cattle. 2 Kai 23. 21-23. 2 Ch 35. 1-19. About 4 years later Josiah became father to Mattaniah Zedekiah by his wife Hamutal. 2 Kai 22. 1. 23. 31, 34, 36. 24. 8, 17, 18. Toward the close of Josiah's 31-year reign 659-629 BCE Pharaoh Necho led his army northward to the aid of the Assyrians. For a reason not revealed in the Bible, King Josiah disregarded the words of Necho from the mouth of God and tried to turn the Egyptian forces back at Megiddo, but he was mortally wounded in the attempt. He was brought back to Jerusalem in a war chariot and died either en route or upon arrival there. Josiah's death brought much grief to his subjects. All Judah and Jerusalem were mourning over Josiah. And Jeremiah began to chant over Josiah. And all the male singers and female singers keep talking about Josiah in their dirges down till today.